Alrighty, guys. We are back. Let us get into creating our own modules. Or rather, let's start first with learning how to use modules, right? So to do that, I will just go in here and I will create a new file called modules. So, modules one, fine. All right. So let's get into that. Then we can clear from our previous exercises on clear rather. All right. Cool. So remember I said how to we're gonna import the math function. All right, it's just a simple one. And then I'm going to also define, and what I want to do here is show you about namespaces, right? So we're using the import keywords. I've imported the whole math module. And let's see if I can hover this in. So this is a module provides access to the manifold functions defined by the C standard. And I was hoping that I could show you how it looks like, but it seems that it's not possible here. Okay, but anyway, let's move on. All right, so now, remember we spoke about conflicting namespaces. I am going to now create a function with the same name as something in the math function, and that's going to be the sign function. I'm gonna calculate the sign of a number, and that's what the math function does, but we're just gonna check if our input, if 2 by our input is equivalent to pi. Remember, we're just going to say pi is 314, and then we're going to write if 2x is equals to, pi, right? Return, we're just going to return a number. Let's say return 0.9999999. And I'm going to say else, return none. And I actually think we can necessarily don't need this else statement. I'll just say return none. All right, so what happens here is we're going to check if this condition is true. It's going to just go in there. Otherwise, it's just going to return this. We don't need to actually put none, okay? We don't have to use the else in this scenario. However, now you see that pi is not in this, right? But I'll just say pi is equals to 3.14. And remember from scopes, variable outside of a function has scope within the function. So Python is going to look for pi in that function. It sees it's not there, then it's going to go outside and say, hey, do I see pi elsewhere? Yes, I do. So let me use it. And then I'm just going to say, let's see something. Let's say print sign pi of 2. And I'm going to say Python modules.py, module1.py. Run that. And yes, I think it's like 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is equals to, oh, sorry. So 2 times 1 point times the half of pi is, yes, it's going to be equals to 0.999, right? So, but if we were to say 3, we would get a non-value as expected. Now let's show you what the actual, let's see what the results would be with the math function of sign. And I say, remember, you call the package module name sign, all right? And then we say math.py. And then we divide that by 2, and let's see what it says. 1. Okay, approximately equals to 1. So that is just how you use modules in Python, a short example. However, what would happen if I was to remove this, right? If I remove that, let me show you something when I was talking about conflicts, right? I'm just going to remove this and then remove that. And I'm going to say import from, I'm going to say from math import all, right? And then we're just going to remove that, okay? So now what happens here? Let's try and run it. We get 0.99, and you see what happens? We have now redefined the sign function from the math module. So what happens is it imports it, then it now says, okay, sign. We've now created a new sign function, so we've now tossed away the old one, so it's now going to use that. right? So that's where you have to be quite careful with that type of statements. However, let's try this import. Not imports, sign and pi, right? And then I'm just going to remove this, right? And I'm also going to remove that. And then there we go. We should have something. Oh yeah, so there we go, right? That's how you use a specific entity, import a specific entity from Python, right? From a module. Finally, I'll show you something cool to work with your trees file path. I'm going to say system and then or P in the path that we're in, the path, right? Print on the path. Right. So now this, you might wonder what's the use of this printing the paths in your Windows Explorer or your directory. You can use it quite a lot. I can give you an example. I was working on a project not too long ago, and I had to iterate through a whole data set and perform some what do you call it? Manipulate. I had to manipulate that data set. It was a bunch of pictures, so I had to go through them, crop them out, essentially go through them, detect the face, crop the face out, save it as a new file, and then use that new file that just contains a face to train a classifier, right? So these things are kind of useful. So just iterating through a path, a set of paths, and checking if like, okay, is this file that I'm looking for in here? If it is, do something else. Not, let's move on. Things like that. So it's quite useful. But let me just show you how this would work, and you can see it prints out all the paths that's in there, including zips, right? So it prints out the path where we're working from. It prints out the path of the Python file that is being used, the Python version. It also prints out a virtual environment. This Venv is a virtual environment. I'll show you how to activate a virtual environment right now. So I'll just say, let me see where we are. Do I have it in? Yes. So I would have to go, okay, we're the same. So I would say source Venv, the name of the virtual environment. You can see it in the tree here. And then I will put that and I'll say scripts. And then I'll activate, right? Oh, okay. Source, and then, okay, yeah, so I have to go just back a bit, right? So say source, venv, scripts, activate. And there you go, I've activated my virtual environment. And I said I was going to show you how to use pip. I'm going to say pip, right? Install, and then the name of the package that you want to install. I'm going to say numpy, but it's probably installed already, but and that's how you would use it. And then now the Python installer is going to go look for that NumPy package. And as you can see, it's doing that and it's installing the collected packages. And this might take a while, but let's just sit and watch through. So that is how you install packages in Python using the pip installer. Okay. And there you see the Python NumPy has been installed using the package installer for Python. And then we can now say something like import NumPy as NP, right? And there you go. Now you can use the functions in the NumPy library. Okay, so now we've gone through modules, libraries, import statements, packages, and pip. Now we shall go through a little exercise on just creating your own module in Python. See you there soon. Okay, guys, so we're going to go into this little folder here. I'm going to create a file and I'm going to call it module.py, pt, right? And then from there, I'm going to create another file called main.py, right? They're both going to be in the same folder called font main.py. And within there, I'm going to say import module, all right? So I'm importing this file, and then I am going to execute that Python main.py, and you shall see that a cache file has been created, and essentially it's in the format of the module name and the C version of Python or compiled version of Python and the version of Python that we're using, right? So this is just All right, so this file is just, how do I put it now? It helps when you see when Python imports a module for the first time, right? It translates the content of that file or that module into a compiled shape. And this file, this C Python file, doesn't contain any machine code. It's just Python's semi-compiled code that can be executed, or rather is ready to be executed by the Python interpreter, right? We don't need to do a lot of checks for a pure source file, and because we can execute faster, all right? So that's the first step done. Now we are now going to, I'm just going to show you a little. So, okay, so now we have, and just close all our other files so that we can just switch through quite easily. We don't need that. We don't need that. We just need these two, right? So I have a module file which has nothing inside, and I have a main file which is importing this module, right? So then I'm going to write something in the module. I'm going to say print. I prefer to be used as a module, right? And then, right now, for that, I am now going to run I'm now going to run that file, right? And let's see, I'm going to run Python module.py, and we should see I prefer to be a module, right? So we see that now, we're now going to go back to main.py, right? And import module, which we've already done. And if we run that, what do you expect to see? I'm importing the module, and it's just going to execute what is in there, right? And what is in there is just a print a statement. So I'm going to say Python main.py. I think I should just press up because I've already written called that before. So when a module is imported, right? So what happens is that the content of the module is Python implicitly executes it, right? And this gives the module the chance to kind of like initialize some of its internal aspects, and such as variables with useful values, right? Right. So the initialization takes place only once, right? So when you import a file, it's not going to, that statement is not going to be ran all the time. It's going to use it once, and it's going to keep it somewhere in memory, and then it's just always going to execute that, right? The import only occurs once, and Python remembers the imported modules and implicitly omits all subsequent imports, right? Now, what is going to happen is I'm going to introduce you to a very special variable called the name variable, right? And in this module file, I'm now going to go back there and say print the name, right? And it prints the values to a stream. Okay, I'm just trying to read what that says, but okay, never mind. I'll tell you what it does when we run it, okay? And now, so now I'm gonna run it, and what you're gonna see is it's run Python. Actually, I'm not gonna write that out. I'm just gonna say up. There we have it. Now it says main, right? Okay, you see that that's the name of the module, main, right? Now, if we run the main file, I don't need to click on it to run it, but I'm just gonna, there we go, module. Okay, we see the module. So wow, okay, what's happening now, right? Module is the name of this file, right? So it's running something from this file. And when we ran this, it's saying this is the main, all right? So what essentially is happening is when you run a file directly, right, this name, right, is stored, variable is set to main, right? It's set to main, what we saw. So when we run a file directly, it's set to main. And when a file is imported as a module, its name variable is set to the file's name, right? So that's why we're seeing module, okay? Now let's do some conditionals. I'm just going to show you quickly. Now, if my name within the module file is main, okay, which is just a string, we're going to say I prefer to be a module. So what is happening is, so if this file is being run directly, print I prefer to be a module, else, now we need an else, right? Else, print something like, oh, well done. Thank you for using me as a module, right? And then we can now run this in main.py and see what happens. So if I run Python main, what do you expect it to say? If you guessed that it will say thank you for using me as a module, you are correct because we're using as a module. However, if we run module.py, I prefer to be used as a module. Okay, then we can continue. We're building up. Now we have what we essentially want to do is we're going to build a module that contains two simple functions. And if you want to know how many times the function has been invoked, you need a counter that is initialized to 0 when the module is being imported, right? So to do that, to get this counter, I'm just going to create a variable called counter is equals to 0, okay? And then from there, so introducing such a variable is absolutely important, but there are some side effects that can occur, right? Let's say I import module,